Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL Round 7 betting review video. When I say betting review, that means in this video we're going to look at all 8 games from Round 7, go through them on who won, who covered the spread, did it go over or under, was the market correct, did it move the right way on the money line and on the total, and we're also going to look at the statistics of what contributed to certain teams winning and certain teams losing their games. This is a video I do every week, so if you're serious about making money betting on the NRL, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I also will be posting a preview for round number 8 in the coming days, plus the try scorer shortlist video of all the players that are most likely to score a try in round 8. But first, looking at round number 7, of the 8 games on the weekend, 4 games went over, 4 games went under, so an even split. So far this season, majority of games have been going under though. There's been 56 games, 33 of them have gone under the total points line. That's based off the closing line for these games. On the weekend, away teams won and covered 5 of the 8 games, and underdogs won and covered half the game. So 4 underdogs won outright and covered the spread. Those were the Dragons beating the Seagulls, the Dolphins 42-22 over the Storm, Warriors who beat the Broncos in Golden Point 20-18, and then finally in the last game, the Eels beating the Tigers. So far this season, favourites have only won 34 of the 56 games. So 34-22 overall record on the money line, which is 60.1%. This is very similar to last year, and if you downloaded the investor.bet NRL betting guide for the 2025 season, there's a chapter in there where we look at how many favourites win games on average over the course of a season. Generally, it's somewhere between 61 and 70%. Right now, it's sitting at 60.1%. Last season, it was 62.3%. Obviously, we're only not even a third of the way through the season yet, but the fact that we're only just over the 60% is very low in terms of backing favourites. The average percentage over the last 8 years, going through from 2024 back to 2017, is 68.8%. So the fact we're 8.7 percentage points lower than that, you'd expect more favourites to start winning, but this is something that I monitor throughout the season, and it's the reason why you can't just back every favourite or tip every favourite in every game. You have to allow that there's underdogs that are going to be winning almost half the time as it's currently going. But especially when you're backing favourites and also laying points, you want to be cautious of that. In the NRL bet finders, which you can access through the link in the description, there's a table in there which shows every team on the money line, where they're winning games, whether that's home, away, day games, night games, when they're favourite, when they're an underdog. And also you can view that same metrics in terms of covering the spread. So when each team, when they're home, away, favourite, underdog, etc., all those different variables, how big of a favourite, when they're $1.20, are they covering the spread in that situation or not, and vice versa. And also those same metrics for total points betting. You can see different situations, whether their games are higher scoring or lower scoring. There's also going to be a new feature added to the NRL bet finders, which I'm setting up at the moment, which is going to allow you to break down team statistics by a stack of different situational factors. So you can see different games, whether they're coming off a win or off a loss, how they perform in those situations, and not just break down what the scores were or whether they're covering or not, but what their actual stats are in that situation long term. So I'm really excited to be adding that in. If you're already in the NRL Best Bets membership with the Bet Finders, you'll have access to that as soon as available. If you're not, the link to that is in the description. That's where you also can see everything I'm betting and get access to additional previews, plus all the NRL betting research tools. Now, looking at the games from the weekend. So on Thursday night, the Dragons beat the Seagulls 20-18. This was a game where the Dragons drifted in the market. They are $2.35 out to $2.45, but obviously won and covered. The game went under 47.5, and during the week moved down from 48.5 down to 47.5. The market got the total right, but was wrong on the sides. And this is, when I say the market, this is based on the odds movement from when the markets were available on the Monday through to kickoff, and in this case on Thursday night. Manly have failed to cover their last 4 games, and also 3 of their last 4 games have gone under the total points line. Dragons have now covered 3 of their last 4 games, and 4 of their last 5 games have gone under. Overall, there's just 1 try in the first half to Terrell Sloan in the 18th minute, and then a penalty goal to Valentine Holmes right on half-time. St. George led 8-0 at half-time. Sloan got his second try shortly after halftime in the 46th minute. From there, the Dragons went out to a 14-0 lead and looked very much in control of the game. But similar to last week, what the Seagulls did against the Sharks, they scored a couple of quick tries, bridged the margin back, and it was kind of game on from that point. But the Dragons responded. Jacob Little scored. Jason Saab scored a late try, but Ruben Garrick missed the conversion that was there to equalise. And Dragons were able to hold on for that final 10 minutes or so to get the win. This conversion for the Saab try was right out on that right sideline. One thing we go through, we don't just look at the overall game, but I'm going to go through the stats of how these teams performed and got to that point. This is back-to-back games at home now. The Seagulls have lost. They lost before their trip to Perth to the Melbourne Storm. And so now in a little bit of a tough spot. Manly, a few bad weeks in a row. In this matchup, Manly had the majority of possession, 53%. Completion rates were fairly even. Manly made the majority of meters gained and also at nearly 700 post-contact meters. So their meters gained metrics were good. However, just struggled to generate line breaks and tackle breaks. 2 line breaks and 18 tackle breaks. Super low for a Manly side that relies on their attacking play, especially at home. These numbers are generally really good. This was the difference in the matchup. They weren't able to force the Dragons to miss tackles, generate line breaks, only the 6 offloads, so they weren't doing a great deal with the ball whatsoever. The Seagulls, looking ahead, they have a 9-day turnaround where they'll face the Panthers this week on Saturday night. For the Dragons, whilst they only had the 47% possession in this game and limited field position, they only have 15 tackles inside the Manly 20-meter zone. They definitely made the most of their opportunities. Defense is what won them this game. 93% tackle efficiency, almost 400 tackles, and only missed 18 of them and had 11 ineffective tackles. Really, really good numbers. That was enough for them to get over the line here on the road. They're going to look to make it 3 straight against the Roosters on Friday this week. There's 3 games coming up on Friday, so you definitely want to be prepared for the games with the Anzac Day clashes. So there'll be a Thursday night game, which is between the Brisbane Broncos and Canterbury Bulldogs, and then 3 games on Friday. Next game on last weekend was the early game on Friday afternoon. Bulldogs winning 32-0 over the Rabbitohs. Bulldogs were backed in here. They won and covered the spread. $1.33 into $1.32. Not a great deal of movement. Would have expected a little bit more, to be honest. And the game went under the total points betting line, which was 44.5. Bulldogs have covered 5 of 6 games so far this season, and their last 4 games have all gone under, largely due to the fact teams can't score against them. And the Rabbitohs this season, all 7 of their games have now gone under the total this year. This was a very dominant win by the Bulldogs. We'll get to the stats in a second. They scored 3 tries to 0 in the first half, led 20-0 at halftime. Took advantage of the Ewan Aitken sin bin with Max King scoring during that period. That's one thing you want to pay attention to with team scoring is check to see how many of their points came while the opposition was down a man, especially with how many sin bins we see nowadays in the NRL. Jacob Preston went over straight after halftime, pushed the margin out to 26 points, and from there, Bulldogs were just in cruise mode for the rest of the game. Bronson Sherry scored with about 10 to go, and now the Bulldogs have kept their opponents scoreless for the second straight time. For the Bulldogs, 61% possession, 82% completion rate. With that amount of ball, nobody was going to beat them in this game. It's basically impossible to give the opponent 60% possession and still win a game. They just have to be a side that has all the ball but just can't score, and then as soon as you get your chances, you score immediately. So the statistics tell us the story here. Almost 900 extra run meters for the Bulldogs, 250 roughly extra post-contact meters, 8 line breaks to 0, 38 tackle breaks. Bulldogs only missed 19 tackles, all extremely good metrics. Rabbitohs continue to not play very risk-averse ball, only the 4 offloads for the game. Bulldogs threw the ball around plenty with 19 offloads. Very, very good overall game, over 90% tackle efficiency. Bulldogs will travel to Brisbane for the Thursday night game this week. They'll have a rest advantage over the Broncos, who played in New Zealand on Saturday night, and will have to travel back on a 5-day turnaround. So Bulldogs, a great situation, even though they're on the road, to go 7-0 this week and stay undefeated on the season. For the Rabbitohs, they made far too many mistakes. We'll get down to the errors here. 14 errors, 10 penalties conceded. Also gave away 3 set restarts to 2 by the Bulldogs. and also 38 missed tackles. This is now the fourth time in the last 5 weeks where they've missed around 40 tackles. Those missed tackles this week resulted in 8 line breaks for the opposition, which is also the most they've conceded so far this season. They'll travel to Melbourne on Friday. They'll play the Storm there on Friday night in what'll be a very difficult game for them, with the Storm coming off that loss. We know how the Storm respond in games where they lose. The later game on Friday night was another upset, so the second upset of the round. Dolphins winning at home 42-22. This game does highlight why rest advantages are important in the NRL. Dolphins had a significant break coming into this game. Storm were on the quick turnaround, end on the road. Spoke about that, probably should have just trusted a little bit more. Dolphins in very good attacking form, which I'll break down in a second. Redcliffe were backed in 390 into 385, obviously winning as an underdog and covering the spread. And the game went over 51.5, but there was no line movement throughout the week. Dolphins have now covered the spread in their last 4 games, and so far this season, the Storm have had 5 of 6 games go over the total points line. Dolphins took an early penalty goal, so you see Jermaine Osako, 4 minutes in, a penalty goal there. When I was watching this game live, I just thought as soon as the Dolphins took that, I was straight away thinking that it wasn't the best decision to take 2 points against a Storm side that can run in points quickly. But it ultimately didn't really matter. Melbourne, from that point though, did run in 3 tries. They dominated that first 20 minutes, were leading 16 points to 2. And at that point, it felt like Storm were going to win this by 20 plus. They're going to go on with it. Now they've got a big lead. Can't remember the exact statistic, but I was being thrown around during the commentary of the last time Storm lost by that once they had a margin of 14 plus points in a game. But from after Pappenhausen went over, Dolphins ran in the next 7 consecutive tries, which is something we never see happen against the Melbourne Storm. And that resulted in a 20-point victory as a 4-point margin to the Storm at halftime. Storm got their late try through Kane Bradley in a period where it was 12-on-12. So overall, Dolphins really dominated this game for the final 60 minutes, and they've now made it 3 straight wins. For the Dolphins, they were averaging 14 points through their first 4 games of the season. They lost all 4 of them, because it's very hard to win when you're only averaging 14 points. Now they've won 3 in a row, and they've scored 30 plus in each of those games, including games against the Storm and Panthers during that period of time. They completed at 80% in this matchup, really good, had the majority of possession, won the meters battle 1,500 to 1,400, 5 line breaks against the Storm, and one big thing is they forced the Storm to miss 38 tackles, which is very good to see them do that. And like when the Dolphins had momentum in this game, the Storm couldn't stop them, and that was the key factor. Storm gave themselves no favors, making 16 errors for this matchup. Also, 4 set restarts to 2. They lost the penalty count 6-4. I went back and had a look. The last time, this is the most points the Storm have conceded since round 14, 2023, which was against the North Queensland Cowboys. Following that game against the Cowboys back in 2023, the Storm won the following week. They beat the Sharks 54 points to 10. Facing the Rabbitohs this week will be interesting to see how they respond from that. With the missed tackles in this game at 38, it is starting to become a little bit of a problem. I was looking through their game by game, and they're only averaging 31 missed tackles through the first 4 games of the season, but the last 3 weeks are now up to over 35 on average. The Storm will be back at home this week against the Rabbitohs, and for the Dolphins, they have a 9-day break, but they'll be travelling to Canberra. The Dolphins haven't left the Brisbane Gold Coast area since round number 2, where they played Newcastle, but they faced the Raiders down in Canberra, which the way these 2 sides are playing, both on 3-game winning streaks, sets up to be a really good game. On Saturday over in New Zealand, the Warriors got over the Broncos 20-18 in Golden Point. Warriors won and covered as an underdog, so this was the 3rd underdog of the weekend to win outright. Warriors were $3 out to $3.20, so the market got it wrong there, but the game went under 46.5, and during the week moved down from 47.5. Warriors have covered 4 of their last 5 games, and the Broncos have failed to cover 5 of their last 6, and 4 of their last 5 games have gone under. Early on in this game, Billy Walters crashed over from dummy half right next to the post. This first half, a lot of it was played in pretty poor conditions. So just the 1 try each side going into halftime with a 6-all. This period here after halftime was about a 15-minute period where the Warriors ran in 3 tries. However, the key factor you need to see here is all three of these tries, Luke Metcalf missed all the conversions of them. So instead of it being 18, 16, or even 14 points, these three tries only resulted in 12 total points, which put up a 12-point margin. So the Warriors were leading 18-6 with 15 to go. With it only a 12-point margin, there was still that hope for the Broncos. Jesse Arthur scored on the left wing. Then Reece Walsh there was a bit of a scrap for the ball. Walsh grounded it, and on that left edge was able to get the second try they needed, and Reynolds slotted both conversions. That forced the game to golden point, and then Reece Walsh kicked the preceding kickoff at the beginning of golden point over the dead ball line on the full. Warriors got the penalty on halfway, and Luke Metcalf kicked that conversion or that penalty goal to get the Warriors over the line and win. For the Warriors, they got the win that they technically deserved. When you look through the stats for this game, they did score an extra try, first of all, but they had 54% possession. They completed at 84% compared to the Broncos at only 69%. Warriors won the meters battle once again, 1465 to 1288. More post-contact meters. Line breaks were even. Tackle breaks fairly even. But the fact they completed very well, and overall, even though they made one extra error, they won the penalty count 10-4, and the set restarts 4-3. All enough that should have got them over the line. So they got there in the end, probably not in the best fashion to win a game. But also in this matchup, Warriors had 57 plays inside the Broncos' 20-meter zone. They scored 4 tries, so it's not like they only came away with 1 or 2 tries or something crazy, but they had all the ball right on the attacking zone. Broncos' goal line defense did well to somewhat keep them in the game, but were touch lucky. The Warriors were missing conversions, which has become a little bit of an issue for them so far this season. And the Warriors have now won the meters game battle for the 4th time in their last 5 games. Definitely a strong forward pack that is giving their halves and backs good field position. They're at home again this week. The game will be in Christchurch, and they'll be playing the Knights on Friday night. Broncos, they technically, I will give them credit, they did well to still force golden point. They didn't give up with that 12-point margin. They got the 2 tries they needed, forced golden point, but not the greatest game. Low completion rate, low amount of possession. Had to do a lot of defense in this matchup, but credit there with 384 tackles and only missing 25 at 91%. Those are really good numbers. Their forwards definitely need to step up. They're consistently losing the meters game battle, which does put on your halves when you're not having that great of field position. And I think Broncos will be disappointed they didn't win this game. As much as the Warriors statistically should have been enough to get them over the line, Broncos in a situation where it's coming down to the wire, they had the experience. They have Reynolds and Hunt in the halves. Both players have played over 300 games. Going against a Warriors inexperienced halves pairing, Broncos should have had the experience to get them over the line, but that obviously didn't turn out to be the case. One other thing I noticed when looking through the Broncos game by game this season, they were averaging almost 40 tackle breaks a game through the first 4 weeks of the season. They were averaging almost 40 tackle breaks a game through the first 5 weeks of the season, but that number has dropped down to 26.5, and they had 27 on the weekend, but 26.5 is their average over the past 2 games. So tackle breaks have slowed down a bit. Same can be said for the line breaks. They'll return from New Zealand on a 5-day turnaround to play the Bulldogs at home, and the Bulldogs will also have that 1-day rest advantage on them. Tricky times for the Broncos. They're trying to look to avoid losing 3 straight games. Lost to the Roosters, lost to the Warriors, and now face the undefeated Bulldogs. So definitely need to do their best to get over the line in that game, but it's not really a great setup for them, that's for sure. Panthers broke their 5-game losing streak with a win over the Roosters, 40-12. Got their revenge on them for the round 2 clash. Panthers won and covered. They're $1.66 into $1.54, and the game went over 46.5, but no movement during the week on the total. Roosters have now failed to cover the spread in 4 of their last 5 games. Panthers, this game broke a 3-game non-cover and under streak. So their 3 games prior to this, they didn't cover the spread, and all 3 of those games went under, and this was the exact opposite of that. So this was a dominant win by the Panthers. Daniel Tupou scored early over on that left wing, and there was once again warning signs there, similar to the Warriors for the Panthers, where they gave up an early try to the opposition, which first halves have been a bit of an issue for them of giving sides a bit of a head start on them, but they responded well. They scored the other 2 tries in the half. Paul Alamotti over on the right wing, scoring 2 soft tries and just running around them on that right wing. That went into the break 12-6. Panthers scored first after halftime. Rabbitohs responded. That kept the Roosters within about an 8-point margin with about 20 minutes to go in the game. But Blaze Targi, Dylan Edwards, and Case McLean scored 3 tries late in the game to push the margin right the way out. Panthers hit 40, their highest score of the season, and also their least number of points conceded. 12 is their lowest points conceded this year so far. For the Roosters, their issues in attack is continuing. They've now failed to score over 14 points in 5 of their 7 games. This season, in this game, they completed well, 81%, but struggled to generate meters, only 1,370 meters. It's almost 400 negative there against the Panthers and over 100 difference in post-contact meters. So the fact they completed well, just couldn't generate meters. The Panthers defense well and truly stepped up. Just the 3 line breaks for the Roosters. Roosters missed 36 tackles, which definitely is a little bit concerned, and that number is well up from their past 3 games. So not their best overall performance, bit of a letdown after their game last week against the Broncos. They'll be at home against the Dragons on Friday afternoon this week and need a win to avoid going 2-6 overall on the season. For the Panthers, this was a much improved performance on both sides of the field in attack and defense. Definitely the combination of Cleary, Edwards, and Mitch Kenny is very vital to them this season. They can't win the premiership without all 3 of those players being on the field, in my opinion. So those 3 staying healthy is crucial for the Panthers' chances in finals. They lowered their error count this week into the single digits to just 9, which was the first time in a month they've had less than 10 errors. They won the meters gain battle, which I mentioned pretty dominantly, gave them plenty of field position. And that, whilst they did dominantly win it in this game and they got the points this time, this has been a pattern for them. They have been laying the platform, just struggling to convert. They only had 27 plays inside the Roosters 20-meter zone this week, which is their lowest that they've had of any game this season. And in previous weeks, they've had numbers like in the 40s and the 50s, but they haven't been able to convert those. They just had lots of ball down that end. But this game, they were able to convert that. They'll try and get some momentum going. They face the Seagulls at home this week, which the way Manly have been travelling recently is definitely a winnable game for them. On Sunday, the Raiders won 30-20 over the Gold Coast Titans. Raiders were backed in $1.85 to $1.47, so significant line movement. There was no Jaden Campbell in the halves this week for the Titans, and the game went under 50.5. No line movement once again on the total. Titans have now failed to cover their last 3, and 4 of their last 5 games have gone under. Raiders have covered their last 3 games as well, playing very well. Another 30-plus scoreline for them. Titans scored very early on and controlled this first 20 minutes. They got the first 3 tries, Bo Fermor, Jojo Jafita, and AJ Brimson all scoring in that first 20-minute period. They were leading 16-0, looking in a really good position, but the Raiders responded and they got all that deficit back before halftime. Tamale, Hudson Young, and Ethan Strange all scoring before the break in that final 15 minutes, and they went into halftime 16 points all. Sebastian Chris scored from a kick right after halftime, which put the Raiders in front. Titans, they fought back well though. Alan Fitzgibbon scored, but it wasn't converted, so there was still a 2-point deficit, and Raiders had the lead. Then Hudson Young went over for his second try, which was converted and followed by a penalty goal, which put the margin out to 10 points there for the Raiders, and they were able to hold on for that final 10 minutes or so. For the Titans, they started this game very well, but were unable to go on with it. 14 errors was very costly, especially when the opponent only makes 11. They also lost the penalty count pretty significantly, 9-7, and also 3 set restarts conceded, and they didn't get any themselves. But the too many mistakes was a costly thing. This is what I want to highlight. This was the most errors they made of any game this season. And if you go through the play-by-play, when the Raiders made this fight back before halftime, these 3 tries, each one of those tries was on the back of an error by the Titans. So they effectively just let the Raiders come back into that game on the back of their mistakes. 34 missed tackles as well for the Titans, around their season average, but still up there, and they only generated 18 tackle breaks against this Raiders defense. They'll go up to Townsville this week on a 6-day turnaround to play the Cowboys, who are coming off the bye. For the Raiders, they made it 3 straight wins, overcame a 16-point deficit to win this match. All positive signs. Even though they scored 30 points, I believe they won this game on the back of their defense. After that slow start, they defended well, didn't miss tackles, didn't give up a crazy amount of line breaks, limited offloads. It is interesting, both sides, real low offload numbers for an afternoon game in good conditions. But the lowest number of missed tackles overall in the season for them, and good discipline for a side that has been somewhat undisciplined in recent weeks. They were giving up 5 set restarts per game across their past 4 leading to this. Giving up none on the weekend definitely played into their advantage, and they took their opportunities. As I said, when the Titans made mistakes, they capitalized in that first half. They'll put their 3-game win streak on the line against the Dolphins this week, who've also won 3 straight. They're back at home now. Dolphins, though, will have a 2-day rest advantage over them. But Raiders get back at home, are playing on the Gold Coast this week, and then last week up in Darwin. And then later on Sunday, Sharks beat the Knights 34 points to 14. Sharks won and covered, but did drift $1.38 out to $1.40, and the game went over 42.5. This was the Knights' first game this season to go over the total points line. Sharks also broke a 6-game streak of every game going under the total. And also, Knights have failed to cover the spread in their last 4 games. This was a strong win by the Sharks. This was their second biggest win of the season. They scored the first 3 tries of this game. Oregon Kafusi, Adam Fanua-Blake, and Sam Stonestreet all scoring in the first roughly 20 minutes. Greg Marzu got the Knights on the board. It was unconverted, but at least they got some points in the first half. This was just the second time this season the Knights have actually scored points in the first half. The only other game they found first half points was back in round 2 against the Dolphins, where they had 20. To the second half, Sam Stonestreet firstly got his second, followed by Will Kennedy in the 49th minute. This pushed the margin right out to 28-4, and from there it was a long way back for the Knights, for a side that struggled to score points as it is. And the Sharks really capitalised on that period where James Schiller was in the sin bin. Both of these tries coming there. And good to see the Sharks correct their mistakes of what effectively cost them the game against the Raiders a couple of weeks ago, where instead of pushing for tries, they elected to take the 2 points. Following on from that, Knights got a couple of late tries. Fletcher Sharp, James Schiller both scoring, getting them on the board, but Sharks were coasting with around a 20-point margin through that point. Knights, whilst in attack, they at least found some points in this game. It was with their second highest scoring total of the season. They did still only complete at 66%, 44% possession, all really low numbers. Meters gained were good, they're good positive signs, and 45 tackle breaks. That's a real positive sign. So, we have seen them break tackles, but these are all really good numbers. They just need to clean up this completion rate, which is obviously tied to errors, which they made 16 errors. They've now made 15 or more errors in 5 of 6 games this season. The amount of pressure they're putting on their defense is crazy, and it's starting to take its toll on them, which I'll show you in a second. The number of mistakes in the field position they're giving their opponent is what is costing them. And that goal line defense can only stand up for so long. The past 3 weeks, they've given up a combined 152 plays within inside their 20-meter zones. That's play the balls inside 20 meters, right on the goal line to the opposition. With that kind of field position, and they've only had 69 plays inside 20 down their attacking end, is a huge discrepancy. You're looking at almost 80 difference there in the number of plays. So definitely need to sort out the number of mistakes they're making. And what is crazy about these errors, it's not like they're doing anything super fancy with their plays. They're just silly errors that are costing them field position, costing them chances to actually score points. They missed 41 tackles in this game, which was their highest missed tackle count of the season, and also conceded 4 line breaks, which was the season high for the Knights. And that defense, we can see, is starting to break down a little bit. They'll travel over to New Zealand this week on a 5-day turnaround to face the Warriors, so another tough matchup for Newcastle. For the Sharks, this was a nice win. They had majority of the possession, but completed at 85%, which helped them really capitalize on the errors the Knights were making. And the 16 errors made by the Knights were the most by an opponent for the Sharks so far this season. Did miss 45 tackles and only an 80.5% tackle efficiency. This is a little concerning for the Sharks against a poor attacking side. Generally, the effective tackle percentage for Cronulla is around the 90% mark. So we'll just monitor that over the next few weeks, but I expect they'll get it back up to a higher percentage, around more so their average. I don't think it'll be an ongoing problem for them. They play again on Sunday afternoon this week against the Tigers, who look to bounce back after their loss against Parramatta. Parramatta won 38 points to 22. Eels won and covered as the fourth underdog on the round, $2.70 into $2.30. The game went over 47.5, no line movement with the total. Once again, there's hardly any total movement. So if you're betting totals in the NRL, you don't need to rush into it. That's what the market movement's telling us. Whatever the number is that goes up early in the week, it generally stays at that number. Tigers have now failed to cover the spread in 3 of their last 4 games, and 4 of their last 5 have gone over the total. For the Eels, they've covered the spread themselves in 4 of their last 5. So definitely exceeding market expectations over the last month or so. The teams went try for try in the first half, 2 tries each. You had the penalty goal in there for the Eels, as both their tries were missed conversions, but it was 10-all at halftime, and realistically anybody's game. But this 7-minute period straight out of the break, Eels were the side that came out of the halftime break much stronger, scoring 3 straight tries, 2 of them converted. They had a 16-point lead, basically 10 minutes after halftime. Then you had the sin bin to Taruva, and Eels weren't able to score during that period. Tigers capitalised with a try to Alex Safe when Eels were down to 11 plays on the field, so there's a 5-minute period where it was 12 on 11 in favouring the Tigers. Tigers did score 1 try during that period. They also got a try shortly after that, 6 minutes later, which that try there bridged the gap back to 4 points. And as much as the Eels had a good margin, with 30 to go, they're leading by 16, it was suddenly back to 4 points. However, Bailey Simonson scored, and then Josh Adokar got a try in the final couple of minutes, picking up a loose ball in the backfield, and they were able to run out 16-point winners in the end. For the Tigers, they're only conceding 11.3 points a game during their first 3 matches this season, but are now conceding 28.5 points a game across their past 4 games. So defense has dramatically dropped off from what it was early on in the season. And that average of 28.5 includes the game last week against the Tigers, where they only conceded 4 points. They had their lowest completion rate of the season at 72% in this matchup. Statistically, they didn't play bad enough to concede 38 points. When you look through their numbers, meters gained was only a slight difference. Tackle breaks only a slight difference. It did give up 6 line breaks for 7 tries, but nothing else major. To kick the fusel was fine. It's not like this was down around 20%, which is what the Eels was, and Parramatta were getting lots of tries from kicks or anything like that. Missed tackles fairly even and only at 35. Nothing major. Didn't give away excessive number of penalties. Set restarts were 5-2, so that was a little bit of an issue. But Eels definitely really took their chances and looked a lot better in attack. They'll have their 7th day match. This is the Tigers this week, which will be against the Sharks on Sunday. For Parramatta, this was their best performance of the year. Obviously, you had the win against the Dragons that they won with the field goal, but this was definitely their best overall performance, where they looked the most fluent in attack. It was their highest points scored at 38 on the season, which coincided with the return of Mitch Moses. They were averaging 13.1 points a game going into this match, so you can see the difference of having Moses in the side. He had 3 try assists and also 2 line break assists in this game. Eels completed at 87%, extremely good numbers from 41 sets to complete 36. And on the game, only the 7 errors overall. They had the season high line breaks at 6, also equal highest tackle breaks at 35. And this will be the second occasion this season where they've had more than their opponent in both of those categories. They also miss less tackles than average. They average around 36 missed tackles a game, 37 missed tackles a game. So at 31, that's really good. They have the bye this week, so they get to celebrate their win, regroup, and then in Magic Round, they'll face the Sharks in the opening game on the Friday night. Sharks will play the Tigers this week, and then they'll face the Eels the following week. So Sharks form reference heavily comes through this game over the next 2 weeks. So that's a look at all the games from round number 7. Looking at how the ladder sets up as it currently stands. Bulldogs undefeated at the top on the 6 wins. Storm, Raiders and Warriors all there on 10 competition points. And then you've got another 5 sides, Broncos, Sharks, Dragons, Rabbitohs, Cowboys all on 8 competition points. There is a pretty big logjam. So you got 5th down to 14th, only 2 competition points between all of those sides. Obviously, we're early on in the season. We're only through 7 rounds, so long way to go. This will start to separate as the weeks progress, but just interesting to look at. Panthers, Roosters still down in that bottom three, with the Panthers getting that win over the Roosters. Still important for them, both those teams, to keep picking up wins. This week for the Roosters, it's going to be super crucial. Panthers themselves do have a winnable game against the Eels, who are sitting above them on the ladder. There'll be a preview coming out for round number 8, where we'll go through the betting trends. We'll look at all the games coming up through for round number 8. And with these games, we'll look at who has been winning the recent games, has there been any standout trends, what the odds were in their past 5 meetings, who's been winning, who's been covering, and what those odds have actually been, and how the market has adjusted for the recent form of these sides. And we'll look at the totals, have their recent games been going over or under the total, and so you have a lot of information to make smart betting decisions for the upcoming round. Then there'll also be the try scorer video, which have been on a very good run the past few weeks with the try scorers. So definitely stay tuned for that. I'll go through all the most likely try scorers for the upcoming week. And with the try scorers, you can already start doing the research if you have the NRL bet finders, which is in the description. All the information for you to go through and study where the best places for teams to score tries are based on their opponent and based on where their strength is and their opponent's weaknesses is. So you can already view that in the NRL bet finders. All that is available straight away at the completion of the previous round. So definitely jump in, check that out. And so you can use these tools to make sure that the bets you're putting on the NRL are the best bets you can be making, and also the ones to make sure that you're allocating your bankroll in the right places that are best for profit. Thanks guys for watching. Hopefully you got a lot out of this review of round number 7. I'm excited to go through and preview and send out all the bets for round number 8. See you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.